For most of human history, wars have been loud. They began with marching armies, roaring cannons, screaming jets, and missiles lighting up the sky. When people imagined World War III, they imagined nuclear explosions, mushroom clouds, and cities turning into ashes overnight. But what if the next World War doesn't start that way? What if World War III has already started quietly, invisibly, and without a single missile being fired? Today's global conflict is not announced with sirens. It doesn't begin on a battlefield. It begins inside computer servers, financial systems, satellites, supply chains, and human minds. And by the time the world realizes what's happening, the damage is already done. This is the new face of war. After World War II, the world learned a terrifying lesson. Full-scale military wars between major powers are too expensive, too destructive, and too unpredictable. Nuclear weapons created a strange balance. Countries like the United States, Russia, and China all understand one truth. If missiles fly, everyone loses. So instead of direct confrontation, global powers evolved. They adapted. They found new ways to fight without crossing the line into open war. The result? A battlefield that doesn't look like a battlefield at all. In modern conflict, soldiers are no longer always on the front line. The new warriors are hackers behind screens, economists controlling sanctions, engineers controlling satellites, media strategists shaping narratives, algorithms deciding what people see and believe. A single cyber attack today can shut down power grids, airports, hospitals, and military communication without a bomb being dropped. In 2015, a cyber attack in Ukraine cut electricity to hundreds of thousands of people. No tanks crossed borders, no missiles were launched. But the country was paralyzed. This is the blueprint of future war. One of the most powerful weapons in modern conflict is not a missile, it's money. Sanctions, trade restrictions, currency manipulation, and supply chain control are now used the same way bombs once were. When the West imposed heavy sanctions on Russia, it wasn't just punishment, it was warfare through economics. Oil, gas, banking systems, and international payments became weapons. Similarly, China's control over rare earth minerals gives it leverage over global technology and defense industries. Without these materials, modern weapons, smartphones, and electric vehicles cannot function. No explosions, no headlines screaming war declared. Yet entire economies are shaken. If World War III officially begins, historians may mark its first battles as lines of code, not gunfire. Cyber warfare allows nations to attack anonymously. A country's banking system can collapse, military secrets can be stolen, and elections can be influenced, all without revealing the attacker. Power grids can be shut down in seconds. Satellites can be blinded. Communication between armies can be disrupted. And the most dangerous part? It's extremely difficult to prove who attacked first. This uncertainty makes retaliation risky, creating a permanent state of tension, what experts call a gray zone conflict. Perhaps the most frightening battlefield of all is the human mind. Modern wars are fought through social media fake news, psychological operations, disinformation campaigns. Instead of invading countries, powers now invade narratives. By spreading confusion, fear, and division, a nation can weaken its enemy from the inside. People stop trusting institutions, societies become polarized, governments struggle to act decisively. A divided country is a vulnerable country. No missiles are required when citizens are already fighting each other. Missiles are no longer the opening move. They are the final move, used only when all other methods fail. Modern military strategy focuses on weakening an enemy so completely that open war becomes unnecessary. If a nation's economy collapses, its infrastructure fails, and its population is divided, victory can be achieved without traditional combat. This is why military budgets today are heavily invested in cyber units, space forces, intelligence agencies, AI, and surveillance systems. The battlefield has expanded far beyond land, sea, and air. The uncomfortable truth is this: the world is not at peace. It is simply at a different stage of war. Every cyber attack, every sanction, every information campaign is part of a larger struggle for global dominance. World War III, if it comes, may not be declared on a single day. There may be no clear start. Instead, historians may look back and say, this is when it began, quietly, invisibly, without a single missile. And when missiles finally do fly, they won't mark the beginning of the war. They will mark its failure. Session 1 explained how World War III could begin without missiles. Session 2 reveals where the real battles are being fought right now. Not on borders, not in the sky, but inside servers, stock markets, factories, and satellites. This is the stage of war where countries try to cripple their enemies before a single soldier ever moves. In the modern world, almost everything runs on code. Electricity grids, water systems, air traffic control, banking networks, military communication. This makes cyber warfare the perfect weapon, cheap, fast, and deniable. A well-planned cyber attack can shut down power in major cities, freeze banking systems, disrupt military coordination, leak classified secrets, cause public panic. And all of it can happen within minutes. Unlike missiles, cyber attacks leave no smoke, no ruins, no clear fingerprints. The attacker can deny involvement, creating confusion and hesitation. And hesitation in war is deadly. This is why countries like the USA, Russia, and China now invest billions into cyber command units. Some experts believe cyber weapons are already more important than nuclear weapons in early stage conflicts. If cyber warfare attacks systems, economic warfare attacks survival. Modern nations are deeply interconnected. One disruption can ripple across the entire world. This makes economies both powerful and fragile. Sanctions, trade bans, asset freezes, and currency controls have become tools of war. When a country is cut off from global banking systems, energy exports, technology imports, its economy begins to suffocate. Factories shut down, inflation rises, unemployment explodes, public anger grows, no invasion required. Economic warfare is slow, silent, and brutal. It turns everyday life into a battlefield where ordinary citizens feel the pressure long before leaders do. And once public unrest begins, governments become unstable, exactly what their enemies want. Wars are not just about destroying the enemy, they're about outpacing them. Whoever controls future technology controls future power. This is why global competition today is focused on artificial intelligence, semiconductors, quantum computing, space technology surveillance systems. Semiconductors, for example, are the backbone of modern weapons, vehicles, and communication systems. Without them, advanced militaries simply cannot function. This is why control over chip manufacturing and supply chains has become a strategic obsession. It's not about phones or laptops. It's about who can fight and who cannot. Technology denial is the new blockade. Space has quietly become one of the most important battlefields of World War III. Satellites guide missiles, planes, drones, GPS systems, weather forecasting, and global communications. Without them, modern armies are nearly blind. Disabling satellites doesn't require explosions. Signals can be jammed, systems can be hacked, sensors can be blinded. A country that loses space dominance loses coordination, navigation, and intelligence, all critical for warfare. That's why space forces now exist, not to explore, but to prepare. The pandemic exposed a dangerous truth. The global supply chain is fragile. Food, medicine, fuel, and technology all depend on complex networks spanning multiple countries. Disrupt one link, and entire systems collapse. In modern warfare, supply chains are targets, ports blocked, shipping routes disrupted, factories shut down, resources delayed. The goal is not destruction, it's dependency. Make your enemy rely on you, and you control their future decisions. Cyber attacks, economic pressure, technology denial, and supply chain disruption all serve one purpose: to weaken the enemy before open conflict. If a nation is economically broken, technologically behind, and internally unstable, missiles become unnecessary. Victory is already secured. Missiles are loud. These weapons are quiet. And quiet weapons are far more dangerous because people don't react to them until it's too late. The most terrifying part of this new kind of war is that it's designed to stay below the level of public awareness. No declarations, no dramatic speeches, no clear start or end, just constant pressure. And while people argue about whether World War III has begun, the tools of war continue to shape the world behind the scenes. The question is no longer if war will come. It's whether the world will recognize it before it reaches the final stage. If cyber warfare, economics, and technology are the weapons of World War III, then global powers are the players moving pieces on a massive chessboard. They are not rushing, they are positioning. Every alliance, every military exercise, every diplomatic statement is calculated. Not for today, but for the moment when quiet war turns visible. The United States no longer prepares for war the way it did in the past. Instead of focusing only on ground invasions, the U.S. strategy is about controlling global systems, finance, technology, trade, information, military alliances. By leading institutions like global banking networks, tech ecosystems, and defense alliances, the U.S. ensures that any enemy is pressured from multiple directions at once. This approach allows the U.S. to fight wars without formally declaring them. Sanctions, cyber operations, intelligence sharing, and proxy conflicts replace direct confrontation. Missiles are held back, not because they are weak, but because they are too final. NATO's greatest weapon is not tanks or jets. It is unity. An attack on one is considered an attack on all. This turns even small conflicts into global calculations. Any enemy must think twice before acting, knowing escalation could draw in dozens of nations. But NATO's modern role goes beyond defense. It is a force multiplier. Shared intelligence, joint cyber defense, coordinated military exercises, unified economic pressure. This allows NATO to apply pressure continuously without crossing into open war. The goal is deterrence through readiness, not aggression. Russia understands one thing very well. It cannot outproduce or outspend its rivals in a traditional arms race. So it focuses on asymmetric warfare. Instead of matching power, Russia exploits weaknesses. Cyber operations, energy leverage, information warfare, strategic ambiguity, energy dependence becomes a tool. Information confusion becomes a weapon. Cyber disruptions become warnings. Russia's strategy is not about winning fast. It's about outlasting, destabilizing, and forcing negotiation on its own terms. China's approach to future conflict is fundamentally different. Its strategy is based on patience, economics, and integration. Instead of direct confrontation, China seeks to reshape the global order quietly. By embedding itself into global supply chains, infrastructure projects, and technology markets, China makes confrontation costly for everyone. If conflict erupts, it wants its rivals to hesitate, not because of fear, but because of economic dependence. China's ideal war is one it never has to fight. While major powers avoid direct confrontation, the Middle East remains the most volatile region on Earth. Why? Because it is where energy routes converge. Religious and political tensions overlap. Global powers compete indirectly. Proxy conflicts, regional rivalries, and strategic choke points make the region a trigger zone. A small escalation can pull in global powers, not by choice, but by necessity. This is why the Middle East is often called the spark, even if it's not the cause. One of the clearest signs of a world quietly at war is the rise of proxy conflicts. Instead of fighting directly, major powers support allies, partners, and aligned groups. This allows them to weaken rivals without taking responsibility. Weapons are supplied, intelligence is shared, money flows quietly. Officially, peace remains. Unofficially, the battlefield expands. This keeps conflicts manageable, but also permanent. No major power wants to fire the first missile, because the first missile removes all ambiguity. Once open war begins, systems collapse, alliances activate, and control is lost. The quiet war becomes chaos. So instead, nations wait. They test boundaries, they apply pressure, they prepare silently. World War III, if it fully erupts, will not begin because someone wanted war. It will begin because the quiet methods finally fail. By now, it's clear World War III isn't just about tanks, jets, or missiles. It's fought across cyber grids, economies, supply chains, satellites, and mines. But what happens when the quiet war escalates? How could it spread? And what would the world look like when these silent battles reach the breaking point? Imagine a world where a major cyber attack hits multiple countries simultaneously. Power grids fail in Europe and North America. Banks freeze, halting global payments. Air traffic control is down, grounding flights. Hospitals and emergency services lose coordination. No missiles fired, no bombs dropped, yet billions of lives are disrupted. As panic spreads, governments scramble to respond. National security agencies hunt for the perpetrators, but attribution in cyber warfare is notoriously difficult. Suspicion falls on rival powers. Escalation becomes almost inevitable. This is the first strike of a war that no one will see coming. Economic warfare is just as lethal as cyber attacks, if slower. Sanctions tighten, cutting off critical imports. Trade wars expand, supply chains collapse. Energy shortages hit vulnerable countries. In this scenario, a nation could be brought to its knees without a single bullet fired. Inflation spikes, food shortages appear, and public unrest grows. Governments face pressure from citizens and allies alike. A misstep here can trigger regional conflicts, which then draw in global powers. By the time missiles come into play, the war has already been decided silently. Control the narrative, and you control the battlefield. Social media, fake news, and propaganda campaigns can destabilize entire nations. Elections are influenced, populations panic, trust in institutions collapses. This invisible warfare makes it easier for global powers to achieve objectives without deploying soldiers. Civil unrest and political chaos weaken countries from within, making them vulnerable to subtle manipulations and indirect pressures. When these methods fail, direct military pressure becomes the last resort, but only after years of silent erosion. The Middle East remains the most dangerous potential spark. Why? Strategic choke points like the Strait of Hormuz can halt oil flows, affecting the global economy. Proxy conflicts, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, act as testing grounds for cyber, drone, and electronic warfare. Tensions between regional powers, combined with global interests, can pull distant nations into conflict indirectly. A small regional incident, like an attack on critical infrastructure or shipping, can escalate globally because alliances and obligations force major powers to respond. In this silent war, one mistake can snowball. A cyber attack misattributed to the wrong country could spark retaliatory strikes. Economic sanctions misread as aggression could provoke military posturing. Information campaigns could create domestic unrest that governments misinterpret as external attacks. With multiple global powers operating in this invisible domain, reaction times are compressed and stakes are higher than ever. The truth is, if missiles are ever launched, it won't mark the beginning of World War III. By then, decades of silent war will have already weakened nations, Economic dependency, technology gaps, and social unrest will have set the stage. Missiles, if used, will signal failure of all the invisible strategies. The irony is striking. The most destructive weapons are reserved for the end, after the war has already been fought invisibly. Unlike traditional wars, this invisible war affects everyone, everywhere. Food and energy prices fluctuate violently. Travel, communication, and commerce can be disrupted. Political instability spreads as governments struggle to maintain control. Cybersecurity becomes a necessity in daily life, not just a military concern. No one is safe, even if no bombs are falling. The quiet nature of this war makes it all the more insidious. Avoidance is possible, but difficult. The world is highly interconnected. Global supply chains tie economies together. Information flows freely, making manipulation easier. Technology dependence increases vulnerability. Diplomacy, transparency, and international agreements are critical, but their effectiveness is limited if the underlying tools of war, cyber, economic, informational, remain unchecked. The lesson is clear. World War III may not start with a declaration. It may already be here in invisible forms. The next global war won't necessarily be announced by sirens, explosions, or missiles. It will be fought quietly. In cyberspace, in stock markets, in satellite signals, in social media feeds. The world is already in a state of continuous low-level conflict, where every action, sanction, hack, media campaign, or strategic move counts as a weapon. If history is any guide, the moment when missiles finally fly will not mark the beginning, but the culmination of a war that has been quietly reshaping nations and societies for years. The invisible war has already begun, and the only question remaining is, who will survive it unscathed, if anyone?